Editor's note: the opinions in this article are the author's, as published by our content partner, and do not necessarily represent the views of MSN or Microsoft. Trump's failures at governing feed his illiberalism. A few weeks back, I wrote a piece about Donald Trump titled "How to Stop an Autocracy." The essay began with the premise that Trump has a will to power and a contempt for the basic norms and institutions of American democracy, and then explored how to limit the damage. The answer, basically, was that Congress needs to do its damn job. But after I wrote it, smart people argued the piece was built atop a mistake. Trump might have the will to power, but he doesn't have the discipline for it. Grim scenarios suggesting his presidency would grow too strong missed the likelier scenario that it would be extremely weak. Yuval Levin, editor of the journal National Affairs and the leading conservative intellectual, made the case to me over email. I think the more plausible cause for worry is that he will be a dysfunctional president. He seems to have come in without a clear sense of the nature and character of the presidency in our system, and he's not playing that role but rather using the presidency as a platform for playing the role he has always played. And for now the White House team seems to be reinforcing that rather than counteracting it. The result of that seems more likely to be dysfunction than autocracy. Levin's argument is convincing. Trump's White House is the picture of dysfunction. He isn't focused or effective in his application of executive power. His staff is riven with infighting, inexperienced with the mechanics of government, and unable to corral their boss's worst impulses. Trump's slipshod executive orders are being easily batted back by courts, and his agenda hasn't even made it to Congress yet. How is he going to go from here to strongman? I felt better, and then I talked to Ron Klain. Klain served as chief of staff to both Vice President Al Gore and Vice President Joe Biden. He led Hillary Clinton's debate prep, which is to say, he was deeply involved in their effort to understand Trump's psychology, and he was widely rumored to be the frontrunner for chief of staff in Clinton's White House. He understands how government works, and we always found him unusually sober in his view of it. Klain had a theory that combined Trump's authoritarian impulses and troubled White House management in a way I found hard to dismiss. In Klain's view, it's Trump's dysfunctional relationship with the government that catalyzes his illiberal tendencies. The more he is frustrated by the system, the more he will turn on the system. If Trump became a full-fledged autocrat, it will not be because he succeeds in running the state, Klain said. It's not going to be like Julius Caesar, where we thank him and heir a crown. It will be that he fails, and he has to find a narrative for that failure. And it will not be a narrative of self-criticism. It will not be that he let you down. He will figure out who the villains are, and he will focus the public's anger at them. As we spoke, examples of this tendency of Trump's were already in abundance. There was the campaign, of course, where Trump responded to polls showing him behind by tweeting that if he lost, it would be evidence that the election was rigged. The pattern has only intensified since Trump took the oath of office. After U.S. District Judge James Robart ruled against Trump's travel ban on people from 7 majority Muslim countries, Trump tweeted, "The background to Robart's rejection of Trump's ban was a festival of unforced terrors on the Trump administration's part." His team had drafted the executive order sloppily and without running it through the agencies that would typically refine this type of policy. The administration was unprepared to answer even basic questions the court posed and, within a matter of days, would flip-flop on the crucial question of whether the directive applied to green card holders. Trump was reportedly shaken enough by the outcome that he centralized the process of releasing executive orders through Chief of Staff Reince Priebus. But Trump's public response was to turn voter anger toward the court. After branding Robart a George W. Bush appointee described by colleagues as a mainstream Republican, a so-called judge, he told his followers that if something happens, blame him and court system. A few days later, Trump held a press conference to lash the media for its coverage of his presidency. It is worth, before digging into what Trump said, to establish a basic fact about the Trump presidency so far. He has received mostly negative media coverage because he is running a chaotic, leaky, and ineffective administration. The press corps would breathe a great sigh of relief if they felt able to cover Trump more normally, and impulse you can see in the overwhelmingly positive coverage that Trump gets when he reads a clear speech off a teleprompter or names a qualified candidate like Jim Mattis to his cabinet. But the Trump White House has made little progress on its top legislative priorities, leading to constant complaints from members of Congress. It has kept reporters busy with warring factions bad-mouthing one another to various media outlets. It has both named fewer candidates to key roles and gotten fewer candidates confirmed than other administrations at this point in their terms. Trump himself keeps running over his administration's message and strategy with early morning tweets and strange behavior, like when he responded to provocations from North Korea in full view of guests at Mar-a-Lago. But here, too, Trump's response has been to blame the institutions recording his incompetence rather than to fix the underlying problem. At his Thursday press conference, he went to war with the media. The press has become so dishonest that if we don't talk about it, we are doing a tremendous disservice to the American people, tremendous disservice, he said. We have to talk about it, to find out what's going on, because the press honestly is out of control. The level of dishonesty is out of control. A day later, Trump turned up the heat, branding the press the enemy of the American people, a startlingly authoritarian comment for an American president to make. At a rally in Florida on Saturday, Trump punched the message home before 9,000 screaming supporters. The media, he said, has become a big part of the problem. They are part of the corrupt system. Thomas Jefferson, Andrew Jackson, and Abraham Lincoln and many of our greatest presidents fought with the media and called them out oftentimes other lies. When the media lies to people, I will never, ever let them get away with it. I will do whatever I can. They don't get away with it. I'm sitting in my office with Yascha Mounk having the kind of conversation that would have sounded insane 2 years ago, but has become commonplace now. Mounk studies the way liberal democracies tip back toward authoritarianism, a phenomenon what we've seen most recently in Hungary and Turkey, and I am asking him whether the media has tipped into hysteria. Whether I have tipped into hysteria. Isn't all this talk of authoritarianism, of autocracy, crazy? This is America, after all. But sitting in my office, Mounk doesn't laugh it off. His concern is palpable, and his argument is persuasive. The distinction you need to make with Trump, Mounk argues, is that he's not an ideological authoritarian but a contextual one. He is not entering office with the program to weaken the judiciary and bulldoze legislative roadblocks, as Viktor Orban did in Hungary. His dangerous tendencies, rather, are reactive to the situations in which he finds himself. In a world where institutions let him do what he wants, he doesn't have a problem with institutions, Mounk says. Think of Trump's friendly relationship with the media back when he felt the media was friendlier to him, a comparison the president himself made at his press conference. Remember, I used to give you a news conference every time I made a speech, which was like every day, Trump said, almost wistfully. But, Mounk continues, in a world where they don't let him do what he wants, he thinks these institutions are unpatriotic and need to be destroyed. That would have sounded hyperbolic to me if, later that day, Trump hadn't tweeted that the New York Times, NBC, CBS, ABC, and CNN were the enemy of the American people. This is a strange facet of Trump's persona, but it's an important one. His illiberal instincts come out when he's losing, not when he's winning. Think back to the presidential debates. When they began, Trump had pulled nearly even with Clinton, and he entered the first debate with a calm, presidential strategy. It was only once he was losing that he threatened to throw Hillary Clinton in gaol. Of course, losing makes you weaker, not stronger. Trump's anger at the press or at the courts or at Congress poses little threat if his approval ratings linger in the 40s or 30s. But imagine Trump spends years being stymied by the system and marinating in fury toward the institutions he feels have foiled him. He spends years telling his supporters that the courts are making them less safe, that the press is their enemy, that the Congress is corrupt, and then, all at once, Trump gains the power and popularity to do something about it. The dangerous scenario is where things have been going badly for a while, Mounk says. Trump is angry at the media, angry at the courts, and then threatens an external event that gives him a moment of opportunity to push through those changes. Before entertaining hypotheticals, it is worth being clear about which dangers are plausible and which are not. An